Yes, I do believe Fallout 76 is worth a further look if you are already on the fence about the game. There is an asterisk or a but, if you will, and that is if you've never played a Bethesda game before, you may want to hold off and only purchase this game if it's on sale, because Bethesda games are notoriously rough around the edges. I am an avid Fallout fan, and like many others, I played Fallout 76 when it was originally released, only to immediately drop it and never look back. It was it was in a sorry state on release day. However, with the Fallout TV series success, I decided to try the game once again, as there's been rumors circulating that the game is much better now. I played 80 hours of the game, and I'm here to report what it's like to play as a completely new player in 2024. Let's get into it.
You look like you need some pointers on how to handle robots. Care for a demonstration?
Let's talk about some of the good things before we get into some of the bad things and some of the really bad things. It's Fallout. Yeah, I realize that response is eye roll worthy. However, hear me out. Bethesda takes so long in releasing games that having anything at all related to either Elder Scrolls or Fallout can be a blessing. Fallout has a wonderful world design. If you're unfamiliar, Fallout follows an alternate timeline from our own wherein it diverged after World War II. The short of it is the games generally take place after the year 2077, where the Great War happened and huge swaths of the world suffered nuclear devastation. Each game takes place after this war, where you see the devastation left after the war and how people are living on along with all the struggles that come with an event like this. Bandits, slavery, even cannibalism can be found out there. The aesthetic of the world in 2077 was an advanced, retro, futuristic atomic age that basically looks like the 1950s, but with like robots and stuff. So the world building is actually quite wonderful, and it is represented well, even in Fallout 76. I enjoyed exploring and looking around. Honestly, as a new player, it was one of the more interesting things I ended up doing while I was playing the game. You see something interesting off in the distance, run over there and scope it out. This didn't always go well. I'll cover that a little bit later, though, however. Fallout 76 allows you to build your own camp, and it's introduced immediately after your character wakes up. Basically, this lets you plop a small thing on the ground. I'm not really sure what it is. It looks like this weird little device. Anyhow, it lets you claim a plot of land for you, and you get to build whatever you want on it, so long as you have the plans. Ignoring the need for the plans and strictly speaking about the building within the camp, it is easy to understand, but the game doesn't exactly explain certain aspects to you, or I missed it. Sometimes hints and tips would pop up on my screen when I was doing something, but generally, that something I was doing was me being eaten by a mole rat, shot by a bandit, so I didn't exactly have time to read the tips that keep popping up on my screen. When your camp counts as a free travel point, and I wish I had known that earlier. It would have been nice. When you do start collecting plans, the things you can build within your camp they're pretty awesome. There are some really cool things you can set up, which also leads us on to the next point. Other players' camps. Yes, if you are playing on the public servers, you can freely visit anyone's camp. If they are not shown publicly on the map, you can still run across them in your travels, but usually you'll join a server, open the map, and see an abundance of other players' camps scattered all throughout the map. All of these are also free fast travel points, another point I didn't know until later in the game. Given that we are brand new players and some of these guys have been playing from the start, it's a really cool way to spend some time by just traveling to these camps and seeing all the stuff they've built. I've zoned in and found a guy who built a 2-story fortress surrounded by turrets and another that was completely Nuka-Cola themed. Another one I zoned into had a picnic table with all the plushies you can craft in the game sitting around the table playing a card game. In the same vein of exploration, we have taking pictures. That's right. That's actually something I never do in other games. Never. In this game, however, I find myself constantly taking pictures of interesting camps, cool events, or simply my character in a hot tub. Even better, when you're taking pictures, they'll show up on your load screens. It's kind of cool to see that picnic table full of plushies playing poker I saw earlier when I'm randomly zoning into a new area for like the 50th time. Now, for most of my playtime, I've been wearing power armor, that thing you saw Maximus stomping around in the show. However, early on, I didn't have the suit, so I was wearing whatever cobbled together junk I could find. Interestingly, though, they have a second inventory section for apparel, which is not armor. You can find outfits in the world as you play, such as the Responder's jumper you get early on, and this actually covers up the armor I had cobbled together. There's a small teensy-weensy problem with that, and that problem is that the game is made by Bethesda, and has a bit of spaghetti within the code mucking things up. While the outfit covers armor, you can't wear the outfit if you want your armor to be visible. And to clarify, I'm strictly speaking of armor pieces and not power armor pieces. On top of that, if you just want your under armor to show, you can't wear armor. Yeah, I know it's weird. And I'm sure Bethesda has a wonderful reason for why they can't do this, and that has something to do with spaghetti. So in the order that they're sort of shown on your person, power armor has priority, followed by apparel, followed by armor, and then under armor. If you don't have apparel equipped, your under armor will show up under your armor if you have anything visible. I'm sure I'm not the only one that wishes for a better system. This is, after all, an MMO, and fashion is basically the endgame, regardless of what anyone else says. It's even more so in this game, since I would class this as a pretty casual MMO. Because this is a casual MMO, or an MMO light, meaning you don't need to dedicate 30 plus hours a week to be competitive. In fact, you can play however you want, to an extent, while doing just fine. Because of it being more a casual game, you won't need to worry about much of stuff like food and water. You'll find it everywhere, more than you know what to do with. Ammo? Ammo for the weapon you're using drops from nearly everything. So long as you're actually killing stuff, you likely won't ever run out of ammo until level 30 plus or even 50 plus, or if you recently swapped weapons. Almost all monsters in the game even scale to your level, so you don't need to worry about going into an area you aren't ready for. There's very little you need to actually worry about beyond trying to shoot that feral ghoul that's moving at Mach 10 and doing zigzags while shoulder checking you into the asphalt. I played this game with my significant other. Every step of the way, we played together. As it turns out, we weren't alone. Quite a few people do that in this game. We did every quest, every event, every challenge, or expedition together. You could do 90% of the game together, and that includes most of the quests. There's that 10% where some of the areas are instanced, and you can only go in by yourself. Usually this just means the quest has a decision, and they don't want players to be forced into a decision they didn't want. Even though the decisions ultimately don't seem to matter too much, at least I haven't found any that really mattered. Some of these instance quests were a little annoying, as sometimes she ran into a bug forcing her to redo the whole thing. You can enter someone else's instance, but only if they are the leader. You can't swap leaders if that person is already in an instance, which we annoyingly found out midway when I finished and she ran into a bug and had to wait around to redo it, and I couldn't join her. VATS. Fallout has VATS, or Vault Tech Assisted Targeting System. It does exactly what it sounds like, and the reason so many people were in love with Fallout to begin with, you don't need to be good at shooters to play this game. VATS can target things for you, letting you play the game without needing to quick flick and do 360 no-scopes. Unlike the single-player games, VATS in 76 obviously does not pause the game. It is, however, still there and works if you don't feel comfortable aiming. The story is fine. Like all Bethesda games, the story is lackluster, and there really won't be any huge revelations that are breathtaking. There's cool stuff for sure, and I'm enjoying it, but some of it is a slog. I've sometimes enjoyed the environmental storytelling more than the actual story. Some of the old logs left behind by survivors are pretty interesting, and there's even logs left behind by people before the bombs dropped. The gunplay is fun. I never had any issues with aiming or strange scopes that are off-centered like that one scope from Helldivers. There's a wide variety of guns, and I believe all of them can be modified with different scopes or barrels and whatnot. Sometimes you can even alter whether it's actually a rifle or classed as a pistol. There are these things called events. My knowledge on them is limited as most of the time I focused on exploration and questing. Only recently did I start doing them. These events are something I could compare directly to fates from Final Fantasy XIV, where an event would pop in an area that would tell a small story or a bit of lore, while you and others work together towards a goal. That goal could be fixing something, collecting something, defending from waves of monsters, or killing a boss. 76 has this exact system, and they are all over the map. All of them, from what I noticed, included a small bit of story as well as, which was interesting. There seemed to be some smaller ones that were fairly easy and could be soloed, such as repairing a nuclear reactor or hunting down some wolves. Then there were these bigger events that seemed to spawn roughly 15 or 20 minutes every 20 minutes. I'd never timed it, and usually these required more people. Some of the bosses that spawned here were truly bullet sponges and required people who were kitted out and good builds to take down in a timely manner. Completing the events generally grants you some plans, random assortment of meds, and legendaries along with some currencies. Let's discuss some of the things I disliked but didn't outright hate. Remember how I said exploration was one of my favorite things to do? If we're taking Fallout 4 as an example, not every monster scales to your level, and certain areas had level ranges, with some of those areas being quite high level. So certain areas were gated behind levels, or well, that death claw that would eat your face, meaning you couldn't really explore everywhere you want. Fallout 76 doesn't do that, and stuff levels with you. Level 5, you fight level 5s. Level 30, you fight level 30s. I know 76 went through a few versions of this scaling method, but I can only speak on this version because I only played at the start and just now. We never came across super high level things, aside from rare monsters. I think one was called a sheep squatch, and then some stuff involved in events. Cool, right? You can go anywhere you want, explore to your heart's content. Wrong. I lost count of the amount of areas we went to, cleared out, read all the logs, spent another hour trying to figure out how to get past a laser barrier or a door that requires a key, only to check the wiki and find out it's locked behind a main story quest. There were numerous areas we couldn't progress fully through without having done the story, and that is this game's version of keeping you out of areas. It's fine, but when you really enjoy exploring, I can't explain how disheartening it is to read all the logs in a building, kill everything, and explore every inch only to find out you wasted your time. Pacifist mode isn't explained well and is in fact sort of hidden in the menu options. So is changing the power armor HUD so it isn't covering everything up. I'm sure there was once upon a time a tooltip that popped up, but again, it's an MMO and a new MMO. And there's lots of stuff popping up on my screen all the time. Pacifist mode makes it so you can't accidentally engage in PvP, which is wonderful for people who just want to chill. Plans. I was describing earlier how wonderful the camp buildings are and how there are so many things you can build. However, you need the recipe or plan in order to build it. These are gotten through quests, side quests, main quests, events, or vendors for an amount of caps that a new player would probably balk at. When we started, we really wanted to build. I mean, the first thing you get is the camp, and you can't really build anything interesting. I mean, early on, it was the thing we talked about often and how we wanted to scout out areas to drop our camps and start building. It is a thing a new player can't really get into. Now, on the public servers, other players sell plans, and generally speaking, these plans are cheaper, but even then, if you're wanting to build like we were around level 20, you simply can't afford plans to build anything beyond a wood shack with no furniture. Zone lines. My God, the zoning. I have a pretty good computer given that I play, record, and edit in 4K footage for YouTube, but this game has some major optimization issues. Load times were weirdly unreliable, Sometimes they were really fast, you sat there for a long time. Sometimes you traveled to a spot for a quest, sit in a load screen to walk 5 feet, click a door, enter another load screen, followed by talking to an NPC or flipping a switch, then fast traveling and met with yet another load screen. Just like Fallout 4, this game has atrocious FPS. I know it's unfair to compare games and optimization because they do things differently, but it's insane to play something like Helldivers in 4K at 144 FPS, then swap to Fallout and just chug along in certain areas. Don't even mention going into one of the bigger ruined cities and firing my Gatling laser gun, which reflects the lasers off of every surface. On top of the bad FPS, it seems like the game looks worse than Fallout 4. I'm not really sure. It says the textures are set to ultra, but it feels like the textures are blurry. Inventory management. This game is basically an inventory management simulator because you spend more time staring at a stash box and your Pip-Boy inventory than you do anything else. You are constantly overweight because you're looting everything you see because you need everything you see, so you're stuck in this weird position of leave early to go stash it or suffer being overweight and hope a workbench is somewhere nearby. Thankfully, there usually is a workbench in every quest building. It's something you can almost rely on. Your personal stash will fill up quickly, which forces you into a small game of what to trash and what to keep. However, if you are a Fallout First member, which is their version of subbing, I can't remember the price, $15 or something. It's just like subbing to an MMO. You gain access to some boxes that give you more space, so this becomes a non-issue. The bugs. It's a Bethesda game, and I've come to expect it, but the bugs, they're everywhere. Enter your power armor, you're gambling being stuck in place for 5 minutes. Instance quest trying to kill the Jersey Devil. No killing involved, he's stuck in a wall. Reset it? Well, now he's dead, but you can't reach the quest item on his body because his body's stuck in a wall. NPC not showing up in your instance, you gotta redo the whole thing, sucks to be you. Join a random event and find out that event is bugged and people often DC while attempting it and would have been wonderful to know ahead of time. Oh, and our personal favorite we came across. The case of the disappearing power armor. How? How in the world does that happen? Completely gone, nowhere in the world or our inventory. The only fix was logging out, but that didn't fix it either. We both had to log out of our private world and start it up again to get it back. Missing a piece of armor? You may have scrapped it, but maybe the game ate it. At this point, who knows? I feel it's only fair to say I again have 80 hours in the game, and these bugs I mentioned happened, but they were not constant. The power armor stuck in place happened once to me and once to my significant other. The instance bugs happened pretty frequently. The last thing I have for the sort of disappointing or bad category isn't quite bad, but more of an annoying thing. When you're in your camp or travel to your camp often, you're attacked by random assortment of monsters and it becomes annoying. I want to have a cool base aesthetically without having to stick turrets up everywhere. So, some of the really bad things, the ugly things, the game lags all to hell unless you disable VSync, which is done by editing a file on your system, not in the game. That's to make the game playable. Now, what if someone like me who has a pretty good computer? I've played Bethesda games and I know what happens if you unlock the FPS. The game gets super weird, especially the physics. In this game, you just freeze in place and lose control of your character every 20 or so seconds, or maybe it was a little faster than that. It's enough to drive you nuts. So, back out of the game, edits again. You gotta go to the NVIDIA control panel and force Fallout 76 to never run beyond a certain FPS. This is a crazy thing that is required if you want to play the game. Every Bethesda game has this problem, and it's one of the first mods that everybody downloads. The UI is awful and it sucks to navigate. This is an MMO, however, and I'm actually not sure if you can even mod it. The UI is laggy, archaic, it sucks to look at, and as someone playing with mouse and keyboard, I run across this curious issue that I can't really get to repeat. or show up on. I wanted to get some footage of it, but I couldn't get it to show up. It just happens randomly, where my keyboard and mouse just stop working in the inventory, and I have to sort of wait for it to catch back up. I'm not really sure. I realize quite a few people play this game with a controller or on the console, but this game is crazy with a mouse and keyboard. Z and C to navigate your horizontal menus, while up and down arrows, not W and S, the arrows, control the vertical menus. And then within those vertical menus, if we're talking about the build menu specifically, the left and right arrows change that category you're in within the other. It's weird. Also, the compass is on the bottom of the screen. That's weird. I'm not sure why it's weird, but I don't like it there. It feels like it should be at the top of the screen. It's really not that big of an issue, but honestly, it is weird, right? Or is it not? Okay, so my biggest gripe with the game is the difficulty jump. This is never mentioned anywhere in the game, so far as I know, and you wouldn't otherwise know about it unless you read the subreddit or watch some videos on the game. Around level 30, or especially after 50, you will come across a problem. Playing how you want to play isn't actually true. You have to have a build. You see, in this game, there are these things called perk cards. It's best to think of these as talent trees, and these cards or talents give you special bonuses like extra damage with your chosen weapon. Unless you look closely, it's possible to level up to 50 without taking all the damage cards you need because some of them are spread out to other categories that you wouldn't assume. Or something that I ran into where I used an energy weapon, but the energy cards don't actually work with it because it's a heavy weapon. I didn't figure that out until I Googled it. You're going to run into this problem where eventually you have to fight a boss monster, be it a legendary or expedition boss, and this guy will be a literal bullet sponge that you can only tickle while he shreds your face over and over, unless you are wearing power armor, because then you are apparently invulnerable to everything. Now, back to these perk cards or talent points. You get one card every time you level up, and sometimes you get a pack of cards which has several. So let's say you're level 40 and you've been taking fun perks like nighttime bonuses, better food and water, more caps, better vendor prices, right? Things you might think are cool. Then Mr. Legendary Scorch Beast shows up, eats your face 4 times over, and you spend all 3,000 ammo trying to kill it, breaking 2 different guns in the process. I know this because this happened to us. Now, as it turns out, taking cards you need early on for a build you plan to have at 50 is a huge boon because once you're at this point where things are difficult, it's a slog to continue unless you dedicate yourself to a sort of XP farm. But that's boring and not what I want to do as a new player. So you slog through the main story quests, eking out a new card every level, being forced into what people refer to as a build. Slowly your damage shows up and you can kill things with ease. But it would have been wonderful to know this early on. Instead, the early game is something like pick literally anything, including your fists, and you'll kill whatever you fight with ease. So you don't have to worry about it until Bethesda flips a random light switch and suddenly the Scorch Beast is wearing your skin as armor. And I feel like this is a sort of trap. Fallout 76 is ultimately fun. I like to pick apart and complain about certain aspects. That's something I generally do with something I like. How could this thing I love be better? I did, after all, put in 80 hours shortly after the TV series aired. There are some frustrating aspects of the game, but it has been an enjoyable experience. My best advice is to try and immerse yourself in the world. Read the logs. Look at the destroyed world. They do quite a bit of storytelling through their world design. If you don't want other people in your world, you can become a Fallout First member, which is basically like subscribing to an MMO, and it grants you access to a private version of the game where only you and who you invite can enter. The best part is, anything you do in this private world translates directly to the public servers. Don't mistake that for the custom servers. That does not translate.